I think it's the gap between the theories and the facts that they've emerged. From where I'm from, East Asia, you had 1950s literature that suggested most of the region would be in turmoil. And if you had to pick winners, they'd be the Philippines and Myanmar or Burma. And really, then after that, you had the construction that, the newly industrialized economies, the NIEs, knew what they were doing. And then broadly now, this whole idea of the rise of Asia, as if this is going to be irresistible and, forever into the future. And I think that the danger is that some of these models actually wrongly inform practices. And I think the other big surprise about how we thought development is the continuing preoccupation with growth. That even though so much of the theory now says, so much development is such an inclusive term, the different peoples, empowerment, and much more broader goals and longer time frames and sustainability. In the day-to-day practice of it, it's still, in Asia at least, it's still that naked, raw excitement about high growth rates measured in, very old indicators. In Asia, I think that the grinding poverty that's existed for so long has been a way, an excuse, that we pursue the top-line growth numbers. And then we kind of assume that there will be a kind of trickle down. And we're amazed when they're not. And we're amazed that inequality has grown so marked in this last decade of rapid growth. The conclusion of this is that to avoid a kind of political denouement like the Arab Spring in Asia, is that we've got to think about development in a much more rounded way, where without any cookie-cutter imitations of the West, there must be ways to include people, participation, their empowerment, and the idea that they have some equality of, if not present circumstances, of future opportunity. Then the practices of development that we see in Asia could truly be a kind of sustained and inclusive rise of Asians, not just of the top numbers and of that thin elite. Well, I'm not sure anyone at this time is thinking about 50 years. It's such a long time frame. And especially when up front, we're facing this really slow motion wreck calamity of the weakness of the Western economies. We've never been here before in the last 50 years. It's really been, for Asia, Western demand and investment that has driven growth. So much so that even from the 97 crisis, the Asian crisis, to now, we've seen actually an Asian production base producing for the West. And not so much intra-Asian demand, not so much intra-Asian investment. And this is where I think Asia needs to think about not so much its global role, but whether it can be more of an intra-Asian regional economy and much more self-generating, self-driving economy, rather than basically a fairly good but still dependent economy.